All right, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Roupp.
All right, thanks, Vanya. Can everyone see our? Steve, can you see that? My PowerPoint up. All right. As Vanya said, I'm the district conservationist for the Natural Resource Conservation Service in Story County, located in Nevada. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of our lesser known programs, as most people have heard about IIP and CSP. So we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into our state-funded programs. Just a little bit of background about myself. I've been with NRCS for about 18 years now. Fortunate to work in Central Iowa for all over 15 years. Started my career in Jasper County as a technician and moved to Powesheik County as a soil conservationist. And been in Story County as a district conservationist for about 3 years now. So here on our first slide, it shows a map of Iowa with every county and every DC that's associated with that county. And everything we're going to talk about today statewide. So these are the people you want to reach out to and ask questions and we get the ball rolling on one or some of these programs. So we have three main state-funded programs here in Iowa. Iowa Financial Incentives Program, or IIP, and then we've got Resource Enhancement and Protection, or Roupp. And then we've also got the Water Quality Initiative, also known as WQI. So starting out with IIP, this is probably our most popular program statewide here in Iowa. It is funded by the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. With IIP dollars, we are able to cost share on management and structural practices. These management practices include cover crops, no-till, and strip till. And the most common structural practices we cost share are waterways, terraces, grade stabilization structures, and water and sediment control structures. Here in Story County, we spend the bulk of our funds on cover crops, terraces, and basins. IIP is a rather unique program because each county is given its own pot of money, and each county then gets to decide how that money is spent. Higher workload counties might come up with a ranking system where other counties often the funds are just spent on a first come, first served basis. I've worked in 3 counties, and all 3 counties handle those IIP funds different. Each county does have a soil and water conservation district, and commissioners do oversee and work with NRCS to decide how the IIP funds are spent. So how do you know if you're eligible for IIP? Well, first you must have records with the Farm Service Agency or FSA. And how do you know if you have records with FSA? If you have a farm or tract number, then you do have records with FSA. Another requirement for IIP is that the piece of ground we're working on must be at least 10 acres in size. And this does cut out most of the acreage owners. And then the last requirement is the applicant must sell at least $2,500 per ag products annually. So if you're interested in pursuing any of these practices, you want to contact the local NRCS office because the funds can only go towards ground located in that certain county. So If you're located in Story County, you can't put Marshalltown. I also wanted to mention maintenance. Each practice is going to have a maintenance agreement associated with it, ranging from 5 to 20 years in length. This maintenance agreement will dictate how long the structural practice can remain in place, and if that practice is removed before that maintenance agreement is up, then those cost share dollars will need to be repaid. Next, we're going to talk about my favorite program, Roupp. This program is also funded by the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, and it's funded by a license plate sale you can see around Iowa. They've got either the goldfinch or the trout or the deer. And with this refunding, we're able to cost share on structural and vegetative practices. And again, each county has its own pot of money, and the Soil and Water Conservation District works with the local NRCS to oversee how these funds are spent. Again, some counties have a ranking process, and others are on first come, first served. So we'll go ahead and take a deeper dive into some of the practices that we can cost share through the Roupp program. First off, we have Farmstead Windbreak establishment or renovation. With Roupp funding, we are able to cost share up to 75% of the eligible costs, or up to $1,600 in cost share dollars on a new windbreak or renovation of the windbreak. And these windbreaks must meet NRCS specs, which we require 3 rows. And 2 of those rows are going to be conifers and 1 row of shrubs. Oftentimes, we're working with an applicant where they have 1 or 2 rows of existing trees, and we can renovate that windbreak and add another row that make it meet our specifications. And this is actually the only practice in the NRCS office that can be installed without a farm or tract number, and no FSA records are required, which makes this practice very popular with acreage owners. Here in Story County, we do quite a few windbreaks. We typically spend all of our refunds thanks to the windbreak that we install. And like I mentioned earlier, we can cost share on brand new windbreaks or renovate an existing to make it meet our specifications. Did want to mention that the windbreaks do have that 20-year maintenance agreement, so those trees do need to remain in place for 20 years. And if they come out prior to that, then cost share claims will be. Next up, we have tree plantings. With Roupp funding, we're able to cost share on tree plantings that are minimum 3 acres. And the cost share rate is 75% of eligible costs, up to $600 cost share dollars. With tree plantings, we do require an approved forestry management plan. And this is where we would get the DNR involved. And this plan would dictate what species are adequate for your site. And then you need to follow that plan and plant those trees that are mentioned in that plan. And for eligibility, this ground must be ag land, and you would need to have records of FSA, farm and tract number. And again, those tree plantings do have a 20-year maintenance agreement. Staying on the subject of trees, we can also cost share and forest stand improvement. And what this entails is thinning and removal of undesirable and shrub species to help promote the growth of the desirable tree species that we want in our forest land. Here in Story County, we do have a lot of honeysuckle, and that's probably the main species we target for removal of. And with this practice, we're able to pay up to $160 per acre on a minimum of 5 acres. And this practice also does have that forestry management plan needed, and this plan would dictate what species we need to concentrate on removing. And there is an awesome agreement on that. So with that, the ground that we cost share on, we just have to remain in the forest for that 10 years. Switching gears into some grass practices. First off, we have conservation cover. And with conservation cover, we are able to seed down areas to native prairie or pollinator habitat. And we typically use that REAP funding for conservation cover when the ground that we're looking at doesn't qualify for more lucrative programs like the Conservation Reserve Program or CRP, where cropping history is required. And with REAP, we're able to cost share 75% of the cost, which includes seeding, or if we're looking at an area where the existing sod is grown, we can also cost share on chemicals to determine the systems going. And for this practice, we're looking at a minimum size of 2 acres that would be needed to be seeded down to be eligible. And with conservation cover, there is that 20-year minimum. Next up, we have prescribed grazing. With our REAP program, we are able to assist the cost share dollars on the conversion from continuous grazing to rotational grazing. And we can cost share up to 75% of eligible costs for interior fencing. We are not able to cost share on boundary or property line fencing REAP funds. The one rule that does make it difficult for prescribed grazing through REAP is that we do require 2 paddocks of native grasses. And then there also is a 10-year maintenance agreement associated with prescribed. Again, the process for getting the ball rolling for a REAP project would be to reach out to your local NRCS. Again, we're having to work with the ground located in the county. And REAP eligibility, to be eligible for REAP, applicant must grow agricultural commodity. There's no minimum to how much money is made. And there is no acreage minimum, unlike the IIP program. Again, the need to produce some agricultural commodity does not contain to the limit. The last program I'm going to talk about today is WQI. And this is another program that is funded by the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship. With WQI funding, there's a statewide pot of money for water quality practices, including cover crops, no-till, strip-till, and nitrification inhibitors. No-till and strip-till and the nitrification inhibitors are the only available to producers that have never done these practices before. Cover crop payments are available to first-time users and previous users of that practice. The payments for each practice are the first-time users for cover crops would be looking at $25 an acre to 160 acres. And for no-till, strip-till, again, for first-time users, we'd be looking at $10 per acre up to 160 acres. And then the nitrification inhibitor, we'd be looking at $3 per acre to $160. And again, the previous users are eligible for the pasture or a cover crop, and that rate would be $15 an acre up to 160 acres. And WQI funds are allocated on a first come, first served basis statewide. So I stress, reach out to your NRCS office and get on that list and be sure that's done before planting your cover crops, because if you do it after the fact, we're not able to help out with cost share on. Also, through WQI, we do have the opportunity to cost share on field practices, including bioreactor saturated buffers and wetlands. And we do have the potential to piggyback with other programs to bring that cost share rate up to 100%. And I would just recommend, again, reaching out to your local NRCS office to see if you have an eligible site for these practices. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. So I'm going to pass it on to Steve Riggins. Steve is not only a Story County farmer, but he is a commissioner for our soil and water conservation district here in Story County. And Steve has participated in several of the programs that I talked about here today. So he does have some experience, and I'm anxious to hear what he has to say.
Well, hi, everybody. It's nice to virtually meet everyone. As Doug said, I am in Story County. So I'm with Riggins Family Farm in Cambridge, Iowa. And a little bit about our family and how we ended up being here working with the NRCS. So we have a 200-acre farm, and it's been in the family since 1855. My family, my direct family, and I moved here in 2014, and we're the first to actually live on the farm and actually do any sort of farming on it. So while the family might have been longtime landowners, they were not longtime farmers. Although there's farming in the family, it was not directly related to this farm. So my wife and I are first-time farmers. We spent a couple years. The reason we came out was we knew we wanted to keep the farm in the family, and the farm wasn't succeeding. It was starting to go the wrong direction. And we learned quickly, you can't do this remote. So we really wanted to make this part of our lifestyle. So we made the big commitment and we moved. So we really, for the first couple of years, just observed what was happening. The farm was still being farmed by a partner we'd worked with since the 60s. He was in his mid 90s by the time we got there. I helped, begged, borrowed, and pleaded for a couple of years for them to teach me everything they could teach me. So I helped farm, and I chased corn with the wagons, and I did all that business. And we just knew we needed something else, because during this time I was also becoming quite a soil nerd, and I was worried about our water quality, and we really wanted to do something different, and we wanted livestock. And the way that we were doing this program, the way we had our farm set up, wasn't going to work. And for 200 acres, just doing commercial farming didn't make sense to us. So we wanted to do something different. We had a vague idea of what we wanted to do, but no plan of how to do it. So we got turned on to the NRCS. And we originally met with Hillary Olsen, who was in the Story County office at the time, and presented what we wanted to do. And she was very kind and didn't laugh at us. And although she vetted us very hard on if we were really serious about this, because these are some long-term commitments, 5 to 20 years, we're taking pretty lucrative crop ground and doing different things with it. After we convinced her that we really wanted to do it and that we were really behind it, she really got behind it and backed it and helped us a lot. And that's been our relationship through our NRCS, from Hillary to Doug, through everyone we've worked with. So some of the things that we've participated in, we started with EQIP. So we took some of our acres and turned them into permanent pasture. So EQIP helped us get the seed mix done and pay for the seed to get it in the ground. And then they also paid for the fence, partially paid for the fence to go around, and that was interior because it's interior to the farm. So that was our first foyer into it. And we also then went into Roupp with windbreaks. So we planted windbreaks to shore up the pasture between an adjoining farm with ours. And then just this year or last year, we just did Roupp again, and we planted another 10 acres of native grasses. We're trying to extend our growing season. So we have cool season, and then we have warm season. So we've done that, and that's all been a big help from NRCS. Doug really helped us plan that out. And the biggest thing that we've gone into from there is the rest of our crop ground. We are now converting, we're starting the transition to organic, and we know we can't do everything. So we're partnering with Caleb Aiken and Noah Wendt, who just live really close by us. They're really good at organic. They've been doing it for a while. They're going to help us do the row crops. We're going to be doing more cover crops, and then we'll be able to graze that so I can integrate our cattle into that system as well. But why I mentioned that is because we went into WQI. So that's the first time that we're actually getting cover crops onto the farm. It's never had cover crops on the farm before. So that went in this fall. So we're really excited about that. So I think working with NRCS has really helped us formulate our plans and our structure on how we move forward. And we really look at, I know Crystal, my wife, and I really look at NRCS as part of our team. I know when I was thinking about going organic, first thing I did was I picked up the phone and called Doug and Doug, you think I'm crazy? What are we going to do? Should I do this? And he instantly was like, well, I was going to turn you on to these two guys you've already talked to. So it all works that way. The process is really easy. You come up with an idea, go to your office or call them up and they can come out and they'll walk the field with you. They'll look at what you're talking about. Field visits for me have been really helpful, really getting boots on the ground and seeing what's going on out there and having someone collaborate with you. It's great because we've gotten other eyes to look at a project that we might have been too close to, and they can look at it from a different way. Plus they know the programs and can help find different ways to bring money in or to help you execute what your goals are. So site visits are great. Continuing to work back and forth, like I said, phone calls, just anything like that. It's just another extension of your team. Frustrations working with NRCS or on these programs, we really haven't had any. I've heard stories of people having problems with payments and things like that. We've never had that problem. I'd say our biggest frustration is programs that don't exist. Like if we really want to put in perimeter fence around the entire farm and we don't have, equip doesn't cover that. They don't cover exterior. So that's frustrating. Another frustration would be maybe if you get really excited about a program and it doesn't get funded. So then you have to wait. So sometimes that happens. Doug can explain that more, but you're up for something and you think it's going to go through and then the funding doesn't come through. So then you're on the back burner till the next year or the year after that. So I think that can be frustrating, but the benefits outweigh it. I mean, you really get expertise. You get people to really help you. They help me with the pasture planning. They help me with the rotation plan, things like that. They helped us with the tree plan when we were doing our windbreaks. We're going to be starting to look at water soon. That's something I'm going to need a lot of expertise in because we want to get the water extended out. And I'm by no expert in how those water lines are going to go. So we're looking forward to that. How do you get paid? I think a lot of people go into this for the money. And yes, the money is a huge benefit because we couldn't have done this without getting funded. So the payment process for us was simple. You just have to really keep your receipts, keep all your bills, keep your seed tags, everything like that, and turn it in. And I think the key to know too is that you get reimbursed. So you do have to put money out. It's not like you do the program, they pay for it. You have to put the money out and then you get reimbursed in it. So I think that's something people need to know. You've got to be prepared to be able to spend that money initially to get it paid back to you. And I think that's something some people get either turned off by or they just don't realize it until they're too far down the path that way. And also to finish off on the pay process, once you have the piece in place, you have your fence up or the pastures planted, then someone from the NRCS will come out, they'll look at it, they'll inspect it, they'll say, yep, I saw it, it's exactly what you said it was going to be. And then it goes before the SWCD board for approval. And once that's done and you submit your bills and you get the check cut and it's reimbursed. And that's been real simple for us. So for us, NRCS has been a super positive experience. We're going to continue working with them as much as we can. And we really want something that we have a farm that's viable for the future and future generations. And I think this is a key way of doing that, is building these partnerships and relationships and putting things in place that are going to last for a long time. Doug, do you have anything to add to any of that or questions?
No, I think you covered that pretty well, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. You did. It was very, very informative. So thank you for that. So again, that was Doug Roupp from NRCS here in Story County and Steve Riggins from Riggins Family Farm. If you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to type them into the chat box right now. I do have a couple from one of our viewers, Sarah Carmichael. The first one she asks, and this might be directed more toward Doug, but why is the WQ funding only up to 160 acres?
I think the reasoning behind that is to spread the funding out a little more so that we can cover more producers rather than spending all the money up front on some of the larger producers.
Okay. And then how often, or basically what percentage wise, are projects or ideas not funded by the NRCS?
That's a tough one, and it depends. I would say for our state funded programs that we talked about today, more often than not, those do get funded. When we're talking equip funds, that's a little slimmer. I'd probably say 30 to 60% of those get approved.
30 to 60%. Okay. All right. I didn't see any other. Again, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box. See if anyone has one. Just going to give it a minute here and see if one pops up. Okay, here's one. Can you use these new programs to try a new practice like 10 acres out of a 160-acre field?
Yeah, you sure can. The downfall of doing that is with those WQI funds, you just get that first time user payment once. So if you do 10 acres, you're just going to get that $25 per acre payment for your cover crop once. And next year, if you wanted to do a whole 160, you'd be at that $15 per acre.
Okay. Just waiting to see if the chat pops. All right. Are there other grant funding sources for rotational grazing, cover crops, etc., that are outside of the WQI, REAP, EQIP that you didn't talk about but know of?
For those practices, we would be looking at mostly those programs I talked about today, plus EQIP. Outside of that, I'm not aware of any other programs.
Okay. Always takes a second for the chat. All right, this one starts with a statement here. It seems like funding trends tend to be only for new projects. Is there anything for land where restoration doesn't need to be done because it was never damaged in the first place?
Can you read that again?
Yeah. It seems like funding trends, I guess for all these different funding programs, tend to be only for new projects. So projects that, you know, they haven't established yet. Is there anything for land where restoration doesn't need to be done because that land was never damaged to begin with? So maybe more like land maintenance?
Well, I don't fully understand the question, to be honest with you. We could be looking at potential cover crops. Don't need land damage there to pursue the cover crop program, or no-till management practices.
Okay. Give it just a second here. Okay, so clarification on the question then is, for instance, maintaining native remnant prairie rather than putting in new CRP or something. So I'm assuming if you already have, in this example, a native prairie that's been there, is there any programs that can help to maintain that so that it's not lost?
Not through NRCS. Basically, our goal is to enroll those acres and get conservation on the ground. I know there are some programs through some counties where you can not pay taxes on the ground. If it's already seeded down or existing remnant prairie, you can enroll that and not pay taxes.
Okay. Okay, and then we have one. How much design freedom does Roupp allow the farmer, and how involved are the NRCS specialists in the design process?
So here locally, I always include the person that's going to have to live with it forever. So they're going to be highly involved in that design process. I'm not force them to plant trees or shrubs if they're not wanting to. And it depends on the county, but I'd like to say here in Story County, we're pretty knowledgeable on what we're doing.
Okay. Steve, did you have any experience with that, with how much kind of leeway you had on that?
Yeah, I think we had as much freedom as we wanted, really. We put together the plan and what we were looking for, and then really worked together with Doug to make sure it fit all the different parameters and make sure we were looking at things the right way and the same way. But I didn't feel like anyone was ever dictating to you specifically how it needed to be. We came up with what we wanted, and we worked through it from there.
Okay, thank you. Does the NRCS in Iowa cost share fencing for grazing crop residues?
No. If we were to cost share fencing around a crop field, we'd have to be converting that crop field to pasture, but we're not able to pay for fencing just for the crop.
Okay.
Doug, is there any temporary fence cost share? I know there's something on that.
Yeah, through IIP, we are able to cost share on temporary fencing, part of the rotation grading, and I think that's only for pasture. So no, crop residue.
Give me just a second here. Okay, I'm not sure who I should direct this one to. Any thoughts on how windmill rights or construction over program acres affects the program rules?
Yeah, so I've had a little bit of experience that with windmills going in on CRP acres, and basically it's just up to the participant, usually passes it on to the windmill company, where anything that is disturbed just needs to be reseeded. And all that work needs to be done outside of the. And then obviously where the footprint of that windmill will be excluded from those CRP.
Can you repeat that last bit? You broke up just a little bit.
The footprint area of where the windmill would be obviously excluded from the CRP.
Okay. Good to know. All right, if you have any other questions, feel free to type them. See if anything else came in. Maybe Doug, you could share that one slide real quick of you had a slide of all the different programs. I think they were on one slide. Just if someone wants to take note of them really fast. Right. All right. I'll give it another minute. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in the chat.
Yeah.
And Doug, is there anything between county to county? I know sometimes you have to advocate for yourself as a producer. If you see something in one county and the other county says you can't do something, have you had situations like that?
Yeah, you do encounter that a little bit with the state funded program, just because the county does have control, and it's going to differ a little bit from county to county, but for the most part, everything is the same.
Great.
Okay. We have one attendee who is wondering, though this falls outside of the lesser known conservation programs, if you could give a brief overview of CSP.
Yeah, so CSP is a unique program where we try to reward the farmer for what they're doing and then try to entice them to do new things. So basically that CSP payment is going to boil down to two payments. One is going to be for benchmark conditions for resource concerns that are already met. And then we'll also do another payment for enhancements. And there's a long list of available enhancements, things that are you haven't done before that are improving the situation. And that's CSP.
Okay. Did have another one come in. Is there funding for internal fencing for established pasture that is being divided for rotational grazing?
Absolutely.
Can you maybe just
either refunding or funding for that? Help cover the cost of that interior.
Sorry, could you repeat that real quick? My audio cut out a bit.
Yeah, so for interior fencing, you can definitely cost share on that through either a REAP program or either funding to help cover the cost of interior fencing.
Okay. We might be having just a little bit of audio issues, Doug, on your end. So I'm going to try to work with that the best we can. Okay. So I will do one or two more questions, see if anything pops up. And then we'll sign off. So if you do have a question, if you're in the audience, you do have a question, if you go down to the bottom of your screen and hit chat, you'll be able to type in any question that you have. Just give it one more minute here. And if someone's on their phone, it can take a little longer to type. Go ahead there and make sure I didn't miss any. If you raise your hand in the bottom of your screen, the chat is still the easiest way to ask a question on these webinars. I think I might have someone trying to ask something. But we may be trying to let whoever raised their hand actually speak. Hang on. We have Bruce Carney raising his hand. Go ahead, Bruce.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Two comments I would make of things that I've heard on there. And I don't know where it is, but I've been paid for perimeter fence. So I know there's a way that you can get paid for perimeter fence. And I know that it only pays if your farm is in grass. Okay, so the neighbor was in crop and he couldn't get the cost share, but I did on my half of the fence. So I don't know exactly what the program is or how you do it, but I know it's possible. And the other comment that was made earlier was, what was it? Cost share. Oh, getting paid. Steve made the comment that you had to do the work before you could get paid. And I know there's a way, I think it's beginning farmers only maybe, but there is a way that you can get the money at least to buy materials to do the work before you do the work. I'm again, Doug and Steve, I'm not sure how it is or where it is in the program or how you do that, but I know those two things can be done because I've done it.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch the perimeter fence, but what you talked about on the second subject, through EQIP, we do have the possibility of paying upfront to beginning farmer or underserved, and that's through the EQIP program. But the programs we talked about today would all be reimbursed payments.
And I think you're right, Doug. Bruce, I do think there was, when we did equip, I do think there was some material costs they were able to help us with because we were beginning farmers. But like Doug said, that was just on the equip side.
All right. Well, I haven't seen any more questions or comments come into the chat. So thank you both, Doug Roupp and Steve Riggins, for your time today, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and if you're, there is an evaluation that will be sent out after this. If you don't mind taking a few minutes to do an evaluation based on this webinar, we would very much appreciate it. So thank you, and everyone have a great afternoon. Got some stragglers.